Borstein,
Yes, I'm here.
Gaffney,
Present.
Meigs,
Yep.
Scylla,
Here.
Kelly.
I'm here.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And I will now lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda? Or wait a minute now, before we do that, what do we want to move around here? Steve, do you have some suggestions? I mean, at the Finance Committee, we did 5, 9, 8, and then 3 and 4. Oh no, yeah, that's right.
Right, those were the Finance Committee agenda items. We have folks here for a couple of consent items available in case the board members want to take them off consent. And then, of course, Ira Summers here for item 8.
Okay, well, 8's at the beginning of the others, and nobody's here for any of the other stuff. Okay, so I think we should, you know what, let's do our committee report out after 8. Is that okay? Does anybody have any objection to that?
4, let's do 4 and 5 later. And 6.
Yes, okay, I agree with you, Tom. That's great. So we're going to put 4, 5, and 6 after 8.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. With that, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
I'll second.
And, okay, I'm moving second, and we have a roll call on that, please, Julia.
Yes, thank you. Borstein,
Yes, ma'am.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Meigs,
Yes.
Scylla,
Yes.
Kelly.
Yes.
Thank you. Unanimous vote.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to now offer open time for public to raise issues not on the agenda or for future agenda items. Anyone wishing to address the board of directors on matters within the board's district jurisdiction, but not on the posted agenda, may do so. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. The board may not take action or discuss any items not on the agenda, but may briefly respond to statements or questions by a member of the public. The board president may refer any matter to staff for further follow-up or to elect to have the matter placed on an agenda in the future. Do we have any open public comments at this time? I'm not sure I'm seeing any public. Seeing none, I'm going to close open time, and we're going to move on to agenda item number 7, the consent calendar. And does anybody want to pull anything on the consent?
I went to the Finance Committee meeting, so I got my questions, in my head. I feel good about it.
Okay, all right. Tom? I see nothing from Tom. Michael, do you have anything on the consent you want to pull?
No, if nobody else does, I'll move the consent calendar.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Thank you, Michael. Julia, and for those who came, thanks for coming. Thanks,
Thank
Justin.
you. Borstein,
Yes.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Meigs,
Yes.
Scylla,
Yes.
Kelly.
Yes.
Unanimous vote. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you for showing up.
President Kelly,
Yes.
thank you. Point of information, I
Thank you.
think we do have one consultant here who's not on the consent calendar and whose item is after Ira's presentation, item 8. So Rosalind is item 9, and she might not be interested in Ira's presentation. It's fascinating, isn't it? I know, Ira. I'm sorry.
Shocking.
Ira's great, actually, Rosalind. I don't need to give him short shrift.
Yeah. Doug, I think we should move item 9 ahead next.
Well, you know what? The other thing is, here's a thought. I don't know. If Julia has phone numbers, why don't we just let them go and then we'll call them up on the phone and say, come on back in. It's another way.
Now, we only have one person, Rosalind.
Okay. And that's, what number is that?
9.
Brent. Oh, okay. All right. All right. So we're going to adjust the consent calendar. I mean, the agenda. Is that what we're saying?
Yes, we want to readjust.
Need a
agenda.
vote on that,
So
Andrea?
move. I move. Okay.
Yes, we do need a vote on
Yes,
that.
go ahead and do that.
We need a second on that.
Second,
Thank you. Okay. So let's vote on the second adjusted agenda.
Thank you. Borstein,
yes.
Gaffney,
Yes,
Meggs,
Yes,
Scylla,
Yes,
Kelly,
Yes, and with that, let's go to number 9, consideration of authorizing the general manager to execute an amendment to the consultant services agreement with Rosalind Brandt Design Associates related to project management for the RVSD headquarters consolidation project. Number 9.
Yes, I'd like to ask Felicia Newhouse to introduce this item, please.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you, Rosalind, too, for joining us this evening. This item was presented to the Finance Committee yesterday, and we reminded them that Rosalind was originally contracted with the district to provide design services in January of 2020 for the RBSD consolidation project at 1111 Anderson. And as everybody probably remembers, in March of 2020, we had a rather unexpected turn of events known as COVID-19, which caused some delays in our design process and as well as our negotiations with Comcast over the lease at that building. But Rosalind has been working with us throughout this period of time and in fact helped us quite a bit during the pandemic and making adjustments to our workspaces, including providing some solutions for plexiglass installation and office moves to meet the social distancing requirements within our various facilities. So she's now prepared to help us in our final phases of design, specifically as we move into the building with the interior finishes, as well as to assist us with move management when we do get to that point in the project where we'll be consolidating all of our 3 different facilities to the one location at 1111 Anderson. So this item is to request a contract amendment to provide a scope of services, including the final phases of the interior design, as well as move management services by Rosalind. And she's here to answer questions if there are any. Thank you.
Rosalind, when's construction starting?
It was supposed to start next Monday, but it's being delayed a little bit because of changes with Comcast.
Okay.
That's actually not quite accurate. We are scheduled to start Monday, yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so thank you very much. And I looked at your calendar for the rest of the year of 2022. It looks great. When do you think, your best guess, Rosalind will be moving in?
You know, it's really hard to say. It will be the end of the year most likely at some point, but it's really very difficult to say with everything going on in the world and availability of everything, including building materials.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Do we have any questions for Pamela does? Pam, please go ahead.
just, I'm wondering, it says your cost of service is approximate 20,000. Do we have a cap on this for this contract? And the other question is, what do you foresee if it's approximate? Do you think it'll be, 25% more, 50% more? I mean, I don't, maybe unless I missed it, is there a range here that we're gonna go? I don't know. I get a little nervous when these things say approximate and there's not a cap.
Well, it actually could even be 25% less. It all depends upon
That's true.
how
That
it
is
all,
true.
how it all
Right.
unfolds. But surely when we got to this point, so I present invoices every month and we know where I am along the whole way. And it will be easy to see whether this is the best that I can assume at this point. But very often because of what I do, the scope changes. Sometimes it gets larger, most of the time it would get larger, but sometimes it gets smaller. And so that's why it has to be approximate. But I think this is I really feel very comfortable about this. From what I know.
You all decided the colors and all that. That's where you get hung up on.
That's the easy part.
Oh, depending on your artistic character. Okay, I just was curious, and you've been doing this quite a long time, right? You're
About 40 years.
I guess you would know, so thank you.
Okay. Michael? Oh, good. Tom, you're
I
good.
have no
Mary?
questions. We discussed this yesterday and I was.
Yeah,
I think
we
it's
did
a
discuss
needed
this yesterday.
service.
Okay. Can I have a motion, please?
I move that we authorize the GM to execute an amendment to Rosalind Brandt Design Associates Consultant Services Agreement.
We have a second. Michael Bornstein is indicating a second. Can we have a roll call on that, please?
Yes, thank you. Borstein,
Yes.
Gaffney,
Yes,
Meggs,
Yes,
Scylla,
Yes,
Kelly.
Yes.
Unanimous
Thank you very
vote.
much, Rosalind. I appreciate you coming in.
Thank you, and thank you for moving me ahead on the agenda.
Absolutely.
Have a good night.
Okay, thank
Bye.
you. Now let's, hold on. Let's move on to number 8, consideration of accepting the district's defined benefit pension plan and Opeb valuation reports as of measurement date June 30th, 2020, and discussion and direction on CEPPT and CERBT investment strategies. I'm gonna, you gonna introduce that, Steve, or?
I'll just make a quick note that Ira Summers presented about this time the past couple of years, maybe even 3 years. This time of the year, we set aside for an update on the issue of the unfunded liabilities related to pension and Opeb programs, an issue that is universally a challenge for municipal governments throughout the state. And and the board adopted a plan in 2019 to proactively pay down pension and Opeb unfunded liabilities. And each year, this is an opportunity for us to get an update on how that plan is working in terms of the goal of paying those liabilities down in 6 and 12 years. For the different programs, and also many insights that Ira Summers of GovInvest can provide as far as what affects those liability amounts and how significant that is for our agency and how we compare to other agencies. So this is this annual commitment to reviewing the important issue. And with that, if Felicia, if that sounds good, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Ira to give you his presentation on the issue for Ross Valley. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Steve. That's perfect. Welcome, Ira.
All right, thanks. I will pull up PowerPoint to help me with the presentation, sort of keep me focused. And just as Steve said, I'm going to be going through this. I'll start with the pension and then talk about the Opeb, your retiree health plan. And in most cases, what I'll be doing is going through where you were as of the most recent official report, talk about what things have changed and where it looks like things are going to be going, and let you know whether you're on track to hit your targets that you set in 2019, and what you can do to get back on track if you're off. So in terms of the pension basics, there we go. The most basic thing to understand about the pension plan, the defined benefit plan, is how it's funded. And basically the money that goes into the plan for CalPERS is designed so that the money coming into the plan is equal to the money going out. The basic concept is relatively simple. Money comes out of the plan for benefits and expenses. Expenses are relatively small. CalPERS is one of the most cost-efficient pension administrators in the country, charging 0.15% of assets each year. Money coming into the plan comes from three sources. Comes from the district's contributions, your employee contributions, and investment income. And investment income is by far the biggest of these three. Depending on how the markets are doing, investment income could be anywhere from 60 to 90% of the money that goes into the plan. So we're going to spend a lot of time focusing on that. To determine your contributions and the employee contributions, CalPERS needs to make some assumptions as to what's going to happen in the future. And those assumptions fall into two categories. We have economic assumptions, things like inflation, investment returns, salary growth, and demographic assumptions. What's happening with your people, when they retire, if any of them become disabled, how long they live, which leave without collecting retirement benefits. CalPERS takes all of that into account and tries to calculate the right amounts that you have a consistent contribution over time that will pay for all of the benefits that you promise during the ideally during the employee's working lifetime. You have two basic benefit structures. One that I referred to as classic are for those employees hired 2012 and before. For your more recent employees, they fall under what we're going to refer to as the PEPRA formula. PEPRA stands for Public Employee Pension Reform Act, which was passed by Governor Brown in 2012 and basically provided a slightly lower level of benefit for everybody hired 2013 and beyond. The other thing that it did is it said that every agency would have the same retirement benefits for all employees, public employees hired during that time period, so that you aren't competing against a city, a county, another district that has better benefits. You've all got the same benefits. You're all on a level playing field. So most of your population in 2012, your entire population was classic. Right now, or as of 2020, the last time CalPERS did a full valuation, about 3/4 of your payroll was classic and about 1/4 of it was PEPRA. Over time, though, your longer service employees are going to leave. You're going to replace them with new people. So we're going to expect it in about 2025 to be about 50-50 mix. And by about 2035, we're going to see about 3/4 PEPRA. And then at some point, all of your workforce will end up being in the lower benefit structure. So you'll have a lower cost moving forward. So next question is, how is your agency doing in relation to others? And when we focus on that, we're focusing mainly on two metrics. One is your funded percentage, how your assets as of June 30, 2020 compared to the liabilities. We picked June 30, 2020 again, because that's the date of the most recent actuarial valuation report prepared by CalPERS. CalPERS does a report every year as of June 30, but because they're doing 2,000 of them, it takes them a little while to get all the data and get the reports out. So their June 30, 2020 reports were delivered to you in August of 2021. And that's the report that you use to calculate your district's required contribution for the 22-23 fiscal year. So we're going to focus on two metrics again: funded percentage, how well your assets compare to your liabilities, and contributions as a percentage of payroll. That allows us to normalize it across some slightly different sizes of agencies across the state. We're also going to be focusing on all those agencies that are in what CalPERS refers to as the risk pool. The risk pool refers to sharing of demographic risk between the smaller agencies, smaller being 100 or fewer active employees in the plan. So what happened in the past before they created the risk pool is if a small agency had one person who became disabled while working, during the course of their employment, or died in service-connected death, there would be a huge liability connected to that in relation to the total liability, and that would throw off costs. So rather than have each agency take on their own, they took all the small agencies and combined the risk for that purpose together. So we compare your costs against all those other agencies in the risk pool. For miscellaneous plans, we compare you against the other sort of classic miscellaneous against classic, and PEPRA against PEPRA. And what we see as of June 30, 2020, keeping in mind that this is just the money that CalPERS has. So it doesn't take into account the extra money you've been putting into a Section 115 trust. Overall, your funded percentage is pretty much in the middle. You're at 70%, and that's where most of the agencies were as of June 30, 2020. I'll talk in a little while as to where you're going to be as of June 30, 2021. Your contribution rate, a little above average, you're at 36% of payroll. On the PEPRA side, everybody is more squished together because the plan hasn't been there quite as long. You're 89.8%, which is practically 90, which is pretty much where almost every other agency, PEPRA, miscellaneous employees plans, are funded in the state right now. And your contribution rate's a little below average, 7.9, but still most of them are right around the 8%. So you're right in the middle of the pack. So this was all as of June 30, 2020. But a lot's happened since then. The biggest thing that happened was that CalPERS had a phenomenal year in investment return. For the plan year July 1, 2020 through June 30, 2021, CalPERS earned 21.3%. This was the best return that they've had in about a decade. One of the top 5 years they've had ever. And it beat their assumed rate of return by 14%. So remembering back to the first slide we showed, where we basically said money in equals money out, because you have so much more money in, much higher investment return means lower future contribution requirements. So that's the good news to start this. This graph shows the different returns. The bars are the returns year by year for the last 40 years. And you can see, again, ups and downs across time. The red line is their assumed rate of return, which has been slightly declining over time. It was as high as 8.5% back in the 90s, but has been coming down gradually. Now, the other thing you'll notice here is that almost all of the years are positive, but not all of them. In early 2000s, the dot-com crash, market lost a lot of value, CalPERS lost some money. And then in the Great Recession, markets crashed again, and CalPERS lost a lot more money. Part of what happened is after the dot-com crash, CalPERS wanted to try and get back to those strong returns. So they got a little more aggressive in their investment strategies. That showed the next few years did really well, 16%, 12%, 19%. But what happened was when you are aggressive in your investments and you try and be in the upper quartile on a regular basis, when the markets do well, what happens is when the markets go down, you end out in the bottom quartile and your investments get killed. CalPERS learned their lesson from this. And one of the things they decided to do was that they needed to lower the risk of their investments. Problem with that is that with lower risk comes lower expected return. Lower expected return, less money coming from investment return means more money required from you and your contributions. And 2009 and 2010 were not a good time for them to ask you for more money. That's when agencies all across the state were struggling. So what they did, and they finally got around to passing it in 2015, is they passed a funding risk mitigation policy, which basically said they are going to try and lower the risk of the investments. When they're going to do that, though, is they're going to take advantage of good years in investments. When they beat their investment target by at least 2%, they will lower the risk of the portfolio, lower the expected return. So when your contributions are coming down a bunch, they're going to raise them up a little bit to counteract that by lowering the risk of the portfolio. Now, they passed this in 2015. The first year that they beat their investment target by at least 2% was last year, the 2021 plan year. And they beat it by a lot. They beat it by 14%. So what that triggered was a significant drop in the risk of the portfolio and lowering their assumed rate of return from 7 to 6.8. And again, back to our basics, lower assumed investment return, lower future expectation of money coming in means more money required to go out, but not by nearly as much as you are going to be saving from the one strong year. And I'll show you that in a bit. This all happened along with CalPERS review of plan experience, which they're required by law to do once every 4 years. So they lowered the discount rate from 7 to 6.8. That by far had the biggest impact. They also made some minor changes. They lowered the inflation assumption from 2.5% per year to 2.3% per year. This, of course, was before gas price started spiking, before Russia started World War III, before China shut down again. I won't even go through all of that. But yeah, basically, the inflation gods laughed at them and we're suffering from that. Wage growth assumptions went from 2.75 to 2.8. And they made a few minor adjustments to the demographic assumptions, but they didn't do anything big because a big part of all this was the sort of the what happened during the COVID shutdown. Agencies across the state laid people off. People retired early. Death rates are much higher than normal. They do not expect that to continue on into the future. So they couldn't use that data very much for the short term. So they didn't make many big changes in the demographic assumptions. Things were holding relatively steady. So the biggest impact here by far was the lowering of the discount rate from 7 to 6.8. Now, on top of that, while all this is going on, back in 2019, you made some pretty important decisions. You decided that you're going to be putting an additional contribution of $350,000 away on top of what you're paying to CalPERS each year. And you're going to put that aside into a Section 115 pension trust. You're using CalPERS' vehicle, the SEPT, as the trust. They have two different investment strategies. Strategy one is their conservative investment strategy. Strategy two is their more conservative investment strategy. And they're basically, on the pension side, they keep them very conservative because the money is only in there, for most cases, for a few years. And you decided to stick 2/3 in the strategy one and 1/3 in strategy two. So last year, you put your $350,000 in, you split it up 2 to 1. Over time, you have a total of about $860 something thousand in the Section 115 trust built up so far. So that's a really good start towards what you were trying to do. Now, the historic performance of the Section 115 trust over time, they don't try, they had initially said that strategy one was going to earn about 5% per year, strategy two, about 4% per year. What we've seen, strategy one, because of last year's investment performance has done really, really well. But this year, so far, fiscal year to date, it's down 2%, 2.5%. Strategy one, which they said was going to earn about 4%. Again, they're about hitting target over time, pretty not far from it. But this year, they're also down about 2.5%. So the 21-22 year is going to be a tough one for all investments. What CalPERS, right now, CalPERS is anywhere from +2% to -2%, depending on what day you look at their investments. Most of the projections we're doing for the year are looking at it with 0% returns for this year. The other thing that we're seeing is that the projections moving forward, the markets as a whole for the next decade, are not supposed to do as well as they have historically or that they're going to do over the long term. These projected returns over the next decade, CalPERS used to be saying they're going to earn 5. Now they're dropping it to 4.5 for SEP 1. And what was 4 is now 3.5 for SEP 2. So we're expecting slightly lower returns. But again, these are both relatively conservatively invested so that if the markets drop, you're not expected to lose money. That's the goal of this, to try and, mostly to preserve your income and then to try and earn something on top of it. So what's the
Ira?
impact of all these changes?
Ira,
Yes,
you mentioned yesterday that we can interrupt and ask questions.
that was yes. Yeah, you can do that.
That was yesterday, not today. New rules.
So what is our percentage if we add what we have at our 115 amounts? You said for our pension classic, we're 70.6. What are we now? In the combined, even with the PEPRA and the pension.
I don't remember that number off the top of my head. Let me stop sharing for a moment. Pull up the software where we keep all this information and give you that answer. This will take me about a minute. So
I think you should memorize all these numbers.
I should. I really should. And I apologize for not
I'm kidding.
memorizing everything you might be thinking of asking me. So that would also allow me to get rid of my computer, which would be feel so good. Okay, let me first. Not there, so let's put it here.
Ira, isn't some of that information in slide 7?
Some of it, I don't think we included the 115 trust in that one right away. So let me check that. Actually, let me check my adjusted baseline here. We do have it in there in the adjusted baseline. So yes, that's why I may not be remembering it right now. Actually, yeah. So it should be, yeah, actually, let's look at the next couple of slides because I think that answers the question. Let me go
Okay,
back.
thanks.
So if we look here at your unfunded liability, this unfunded liability, the revised one, takes into account your additional contributions in the 115 trust. So where we expect you to be as of June 30, 2021 is an unfunded liability of 5 million. And your funded percentage is just about 83%. Now, the numbers in red is where we would have expected you to be before all these changes took into account. So you'll notice on the funded percentage, your net impact is you're up about 9% higher because of the great return, your additional contribution, less the lower discount rate impact. So you went up about 10% from the return, almost another percent from your money going in, and dropping about 2% because of the discount rate change. And on the unfunded liability, you were expecting to have about 7.5 million in unfunded liability. It's now 5. So you cut off about a third of it. What that also means, your original goal was to get 100% funded. In 2019, you said in 12 years, we want to get 100% funded with the extra money. And we were a little behind target last year when we looked at this. Right now, we are ahead of target. Looks like about 2027 is when you're going to hit 100% funded. So you're ahead of target. Now, I didn't put it in the slide, but Corey asked me to take a look and see where we expect to be a year from now if you earn zero. And that moves this to about 2030. So you're still on target, ahead of target to hit your goal of being 100% funded by 2031. In terms of required contributions from CalPERS, we're seeing those drop relatively significantly. They're phasing in the good year over 5 years, which is their standard policy. So we'll have about 220,000. I see a hand up for, yeah. So.
This isn't on this topic, so I can wait till you're finished, Ira. Unless you're
Okay.
done.
You're not going to ask me design issues, I hope, because I'm not going to be able to pick colors.
No, I just want a quick definition on trust, this trust account, or how you define it.
Take the money out. That's what it means. We've put money
Well,
in, can't be removed and used for other things.
So yeah, I don't know if the definition is the right thing, but yeah, this is a separate account that is controlled by you. You put the money in. The money that once it goes in there can only be used to pay for retirement benefits.
How does the interest occur?
How does it earn money? Now, unlike money being kept in your internal reserves, okay, the money in your internal reserves is required by California law to be invested in short-term, high-quality public investment vehicles, basically government bonds shorter than 5 years, I think maybe even less than that.
Okay.
There is an exception to that rule. And that exception is money set aside to pay for retirement benefits like pensions and Opeb. So money in CalPERS can be invested more diversified, and money in the 115 trust also, because it's going to be used eventually to go to CalPERS, also qualifies for that exception and can be invested with a more diverse portfolio, which is how you can earn more money than the roughly 0.5% to 1% you're earning on your internal money right now, while still holding the money and preparing it for this. So is that the question you were thinking?
That was excellent, Ira. I'll never ask a question again about trust. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else want to see if I've forgotten something?
Yeah. So Ira, in essence, I can't really read these years too well, but are we paying $1.2 million now? The red line?
The red line this year, your contribution is like right now we're 1.15, I think is this year. Next year was supposed to go up to 1.2 million, but it didn't go up quite that high. So you're about 1.15 plus the 350,000 that you're putting into the 115 trust. So
Sure.
A total of about 1.5 million is I somewhere around there is what I think was budgeted.
Okay.
And again, this was, initially we expected to keep going up, and now it's coming down for a little bit. Although with the 0% return, it's going to end out somewhere in between this green line and the red line as we move forward. So your policy is about trying to get to 100% funded faster, and doing that by putting money into the Section 115 trust. And that's a great start, and it's starting to work, and it's going to be making some significant progress. A few questions. Okay. Now, Section 115 trusts tend to be used by public agencies in California 2 different ways. One is to shorten the time to get your trust to 100% funded. By putting it in the 115 trust, CalPERS doesn't officially have the money. It's a separate trust. So they do not lower your contributions to reflect that extra money in there until you move it from the 115 trust over to CalPERS. So one goal, and that keeps your contributions a little bit higher, allows you to get things done, pay off the unfunded liability faster. That's one way it's being used. Other agencies use it as more like a rainy day fund. They put the money in there and they figure that many agencies have revenues that are a lot more volatile than your district. Your district tends to be relatively consistent with the money that's coming in. So their other agencies worry, oh, if our revenues drop again, like they did in 2020, we may not have enough money to pay things off. Or if CalPERS doesn't hit their targets, contributions jump up, we won't have the extra money available to do this. So for those agencies, they use it to make future payments to CalPERS. My understanding is that your primary goal is option one. And that's one of the things I want to make sure that I get sort of reaffirmed by the board, that that's the main reason that you're doing this. Because when we start, as you're getting close to hitting your goals, we should start to have a discussion of when is the right time to take the money out of the trust and give it to CalPERS, and how long should you keep putting money in, and when should you stop making those additional contributions. So we want to, ideally we have that discussion before the time hits and we're not being reactive. So hoping to get, the finance committee, discussed this a little bit yesterday. Again, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page, that your primary goal is more to get 100% funded than to worry about a rainy day fund. Not that you can't use it for both purposes.
Yeah, we want to shorten the time. That was always our plan.
Okay. And all right, I'm hoping to give people time to say otherwise, but I'm not hearing it. That's good.
Well, what is the benefit? Because we don't know what's going to be happening with the whole world as we're all watching. I just would really want to get clear, what are the benefits and what are the risks, Ira? If you could maybe give me some ideas.
Okay. It's very reasonable for you to be worried about the world as a whole and the world economy right now. We have seen in the last few years more volatility in the market than you've seen historically. Moving forward, there are a lot of things going on right now that are very likely to basically slow down revenues across the country, around the world, and raise prices. So we're seeing supply chain issues that we've been seeing throughout the year. They're going to be getting worse moving forward, partly because China, where a lot of our stuff comes from, has shut down production in many of their major cities. So if they continue doing that, they're doing that to protect themselves against COVID. If they continue to do that, right now, 20% of their GDP is being basically shut down. If they continue it for the year, that's going to cause a major problem, and exports are going to grind to a halt.
Yeah, Shanghai's closed.
Shanghai's closed, and a lot of other cities in China are also closed. From South America and Central America, there have been some blocks on things crossing the border through Texas that have slowed down the Texas economy, and parts coming from those places to the US that's causing a few more $1 billion of shutdown. I think it cost Texas $4 billion in the last year because of the things that they did. On top of that, we're seeing World War III starting in Europe, and we get a lot of raw materials from there. All of those are potentially leading to causing another slowdown in the economy. Now, on the other hand, your district in the last one seemed to keep, even though a lot of the Bay Area and the country and the state and the country shut down, your revenues stayed relatively solid during that time period because you're not connected to sales taxes. and not even as much to property values because you have more of a fixed amount per unit. So unless things shut down and go away, you're not going to get hurt in terms of revenue. Your costs may go up faster than expected, and CalPERS returns may drop down, which may cause CalPERS to ask you for more money. But we can project that out. If that happens, then you can use the money in the 115 trust to help pay for some of that if needed. Probably not going to be required. What you might want to do if things get really tough is shift money that you're currently putting into the 115 trust and instead use it to make additional contributions to CalPERS. But since basically we're coming back, we're discussing this every year, I should be able to give you at least a year's warning, maybe 2, before you're going to need to make those sorts of shifts. So,
Iris, so basically, everything you've said indicates to me that we ought to continue what we're doing with option 1, which is while we can fund a little bit extra and put it in the 115 trust, and then later, if we need it to help us make payments, it's an option that we can adopt later.
absolutely. I mean, in fact, that is the strongest message that I've been sort of passing on to clients across the state and across the country, is that the best time to put money aside is when you have it. If you wait until the economy shuts down and you don't have money, and CalPERS is asking you for more, that's the worst possible time to have to make it. And that's what a lot of agencies had to deal with in 2009 and 2010, is they didn't have money and CalPERS was asking them for more. So setting aside money while you have it, when you can afford it, rather than spending it on other things, is a great strategy and puts you in a very strong position so you can continue providing services if things go bad.
Yeah, and we mentioned in the finance meeting, Ira, that we'll continue to rely on your advice on when and where to move money ongoing as we move forward. I think many of us on this board can read the tea leaves ourselves, but we also respect your advice and counsel.
So, all right. Did that answer the question you were asking?
Cam?
Okay. So,
Yes.
yeah, ultimately, what we're going to try and get to, and hopefully we'll get a chance to work with your staff before next year, is to come up with sort of refining your policy to figure out when you're planning on using money and what are the exceptions to that where you may use it for something else to help pay for things. So right now, the target's going to be to get you to 100%. When you get there, the goal will be to take the money from the 115 trust and pay it to CalPERS to get that paid off at that time. And then our recommendation is probably going to be to continue putting money in the 115 trust for a little while to build a cushion, so that if CalPERS makes their assumptions more conservative or has a really bad year in investments, you can again shift the money over and get back to 100% and keep at that target. But again, I think we've got time to do it. So unless you feel an urgency or have a lot of extra money to spend, my suggestion is just monitor at this time, and we'll probably have some actions for next year.
Thank you.
Okay, now going on to the Opeb. And as a reminder, Opeb stands for other post-employment benefits, or post-employment benefits other than pensions. And while there are a bunch of things that technically qualify for it, in your case, we're talking about retiree health benefits. The last valuation that was done for your agency was done with a measurement date as of June 30, 2020. So with data as of that point in time, it was used in your June 30, 2021 financial statements, because this, that's the accounting standards basically say you can have a 1-year time lag, and that's generally what's practiced, so that no one's rushing too much to get these things done. At that point, you were 45% funded and had an unfunded liability of about $900,000. Now, right around that time, in fact, right before that, you adopted some enhanced benefits. What the enhanced benefits did is they took your benefits from you paying 40% of the premiums to one where your plan would pay up to 100% of the premiums. So, you must be at least age 55 with 5 years of service and retire directly from the district to get these benefits. But if you've had 10 years of service, you'll get 50% of the premium paid. 15 years, you get 75% paid. In 20 or more years, your long service employees would have all of their premium, 100% of their premium paid. When this change was made, the goal was to have it fully paid for by employee contributions. So a rate was set, which was originally $109 per pay period for each employee. And beginning in 2022 was reduced to $88 per pay period for employees. So each of the 26 pay periods throughout the year, the employees pay this amount of money. And again, it's monitored every year or two, but it's designed eventually to pay the full cost of this benefit over time. It should not, if things go as expected or close, it should not cost the district at all over time an additional dollar in contributions. But because of accounting standards, this is part of the plan. When it got adopted, you had a bunch of employees who were already working for the agency. So under accounting standards and actuarial standards of practice, some of that liability gets attributed to their past service for the plan. So the plan's liability increased by $470,000 when that happened. Now, again, eventually it'll all be paid for by the employees, but the plan's liabilities show up on the district's books. So at the moment that happened, your liability increased by $470,000, even though there is a plan to pay for it down the road. Now, in terms of investment return, the CERP has over time done relatively well. You're in strategy 1, which is their most aggressive. Between 2020, the year that I showed you, and June 30, 2021, the CERP earned 30%. So again, their strongest year ever. This year, to date, they're down 1.5%. And expectations for the CERP, which originally were somewhere around 7.5% per year, are now down to 6% per year moving forward. So they're expecting the expectations for the market as a whole for the next decade are going to be a very, very tough place to earn returns. So moving forward, we expect your liability, your discount rate, assumed rate of return on the plan, to be lowered from 7.8 down to 6. So doing that, again, assumed investment return going down, liabilities go up, that's going to raise your unfunded liability again because of that. 30% return is going to cancel out a lot of it, though. So in the short term, you probably won't feel much pain. Now, your funding policy for this plan, and this plan is under your discretion, not mostly by CalPERS. You are setting it, you're making the benefit payments each year from your general fund. And then on top of that, you're putting $100,000 per year into the 115 trust. And then the employees are paying their money on top of that, which goes to the 115 trust. So, and then once you hit 100% funded, your additional contributions are going to stop and you're going to be able to start making payments from the trust rather than from your general assets.
I have a quick question, Ira, before it gets lost.
Sure.
On the contributions, I noticed there were a drop from 109 to 88 something. How did that happen, or what is that reflective of, or I don't understand that.
So I'm not sure exactly how the 109.73 was set, but the $88 was done. There was an actuarial analysis done by one of our related companies who does your work. And we did the analysis and basically determined that $88 per pay period is the right amount to pay for it. So I think the 109 was set, a very quick, rough estimate right when the plan started.
Okay, so these contributions are going to change every year according to your data and statistics and all that?
I don't know, and we can talk about the right way to do this. My suggestion is you don't necessarily you want to change you don't want to wait too long before changes, but you don't want to change them too frequently, because that ends up having an impact on your employee morale and take home pay and other things.
Ira, they're set to be evaluated and implemented every 2 years.
Okay, yeah, that seems perfectly reasonable. That's also when the actuarial standards say we should be doing a full valuation every 2 years, and that's a good time to do it. And one of the things that I want to make sure that we have included in that is a way of tracking both the money that has been paid so far by employees and the extra benefits that have gone out to these once they retire under this plan, so that we have a way to make sure that the $470,000 of additional liability that is put upon your district eventually gets paid for by the employees and doesn't accidentally slip into something that just the district pays for.
Thank you, Ira.
Other questions before you forget them? Okay. So where we are right now, in 2019, you can set your policy to have this plan fully funded in 5 years. Right now, depending on what the returns are over the next few years, you're going to be behind target. Again, 2 big reasons you're behind target. One is this additional $470,000 in liability that is a plan liability, even though eventually it'll be paid for by the employees. So that lowers the funded percentage. And then the lowering of the discount rate from 7.5 down to 6 is also going to lower the liabilities, or raise the liabilities, lower your funded percentage.
Right.
So you're scheduled to, if they consistently beat their assumed return by 2%, you would get 100% funded in 2026. If they hit their target right now, it's at 2027. And if they are 2% behind, it's going to be 2028. So you're a little bit behind target. Again, more money, if they make more money, unfunded liability goes down faster. And
we only have this paid off in 6 years, and that was 2019. So
2025 would be year 6.
Mm-hmm.
So if we looked, one of the things we looked at was what extra money would it take to get you 100% funded by 2025 and hit that target. Now to do that, that would basically say that if you change your $100,000 a year you're putting in and increase it to $210,000, basically doubling it, you will be on target to get to 100% funded by June 30, 2025. So, and that would be starting in the current fiscal year, putting the money in. So sometime between now and June 30, put the rest of the extra 100,000 in, then next year, put in the next 210 and do that for those 4 years. You should be, if they hit their assumed rate of return, although we already plugged in the 0 for this year, hit 100% funded. And when that happens, contribution rates would go down and you'll start getting savings.
So Ira, we have 2 pieces of this OPEB. One is the district's, part of the plan, and the other is the employees' part of the plan. And I think we discussed that the district's part of the plan is going to be 100% funded soon?
In fact, right. If we look at the unfunded liability here, keeping in mind that 470,000 of this belongs to the employees, when you hit about 470,000, about 500,000 is 2024. So you're actually ahead of target to get to 100, to get to where you were going to be. So if that enhancement hadn't been made, then you would be on target and we wouldn't be talking about extra contributions.
So if we go to 210,000 per year, we would in essence be pre-funding the employees' share of the plan, after 2024, or I don't know, maybe even before that. And then the calculations that you would give us would have the employees pay us back.
Right.
Yeah, but the advantage is that it gets us off our books. And I think, so it's a board decision here that we discussed yesterday is, do we want to, to increase the funding of the plan? Or in fact, if we keep funding $100,000 after 2024, aren't we then funding the some of the employees plan? If we continue the 100,000,
you are getting the plan in better funded position. Again, we're going to be working, whether it's with your auditors or whoever, to make sure that we track all the money that the employees owe. So eventually the employees will pay it back. This should not have any impact on what the employees pay over time. They will eventually pay for it. It's just a question of making sure your books look better, because this is on your books. It's allowing you to get the power of the better investment from having the money in here than it would from being in your internal reserves. And again, the one downside is maybe in if we're not careful and we don't communicate it well on the negotiation side, if the employees say, oh, look, you're 100% funded, you don't need much of our money anymore. And so that's why we need to make sure that in the report we are tracking, and we also provide information about the employee side of the liability and where it is.
right? So that's I think staff has mentioned that we could reduce our unfunded liability that shows up on the books if we increase our annual contribution above 100 to 200,000. But I also think if we just continue the 100,000,
then you end out going, right now the target date is 2027 instead of 2025. So you're not quite hitting the policy. And again, so the reason we looked at this to answer the question of, you set the goal of 2025. If that is still your intention, then it's going to need to up the amount to 210,000. If that's no longer your intention, you may want to change that policy or that goal.
But if we get to where you've got that star, we'll have a total zero unfunded liability, and the employees will owe us, we'll still need to reimburse us.
They'll still need to reimburse you.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to track it anyway.
Well, I guess the board needs to decide what to do on this. I'm kind of the thing that the thought that we could 2027 is better than most. And it's a kind of a compromise. We're continuing, we're continuing 100,000, and we'll help the employees because we're going to have the earnings for them, increased earnings. That's kind of my logic. I'd like the rest of the board. We have to decide this, don't we? Because it's going to be part of our budget.
Right. And if you do want to try and get to 100% by 2025, the sooner you start at this, the less it's going to cost per year.
Right.
For the employees.
Well, no, employees stay the same. The sooner that if you want to get to 100% by 2025, right now, it's going to be 210,000 a year instead of 100,000. So an extra
Yeah, I-
100,000 a
okay.
year because you're doing it for 4 years. But if a year from now you start it, it's going to be only 3 years. So the amount you have to pay jumps up.
To get
Extra
to
to
that
catch up.
target. Yeah.
So again, if you want to hit this target, starting sooner is better than starting later.
Right.
If you don't, then saying it's okay, 2027 is pretty good, you're in better shape than most. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's up to the board. And yeah, I think it's important that the board does this consciously rather than having it happen to you.
Yep.
Was kind of a decision, isn't it, Doug, that we need to,
Yeah. It's budget's coming up.
okay,
Absolutely, Tom. No question about it. It's not on tonight's agenda, but it's going to be on a future agenda. And we'll put that to the board to see how we all feel about it.
Okay, so that is the end of my presentation.
And we also, Ira, talked about, should we be in, investment plan scenario 1 or 2? I kind of believe, just from my point of view, we're about right. How do you feel, Ira? 2/3 and the more aggressive? Or
Okay, that's on the pension side. And I think on the pension side, you're probably okay. Because again, both of these are relatively conservative and trying to get the extra return out of it is probably a good idea. On the Opeb side, they have 3 options there that are all a little more aggressive and this is the SERPT.
Okay.
So, but they are bringing those expected returns down. So right now you're in the one that earns 6. Once you get to 100% funded, a number of agencies that once they hit their 100% funded target, they lower the risk of their portfolio.
Yeah.
They say at that point is a good time to get rid of some of the downside because you're already there, so you don't get hurt by a down market by as much. So over the next few years, maybe a time to start thinking on the Opeb side of whether to move down the chart from option 1 to strategy 2. But I don't know if you need to be there right now.
Okay. I kind of like that idea. I like being in, the plan 1 for the SERP, and the 2/3, 1/3 seems to be okay on the other one. So that was another thing we thought the board ought to make sure the board understands.
Okay.
Well, and then our other comment was that report.
Excuse me 1 second, Tom. Ira, can you stop sharing your screen, please? There we go. Gotta get back to seeing everybody. Thank you.
The other thing we said was that Ira managed to help us understand that 100-page report that had about 4 million numbers in it and was incomprehensible for a layman, quite frankly. So board members, what do you think? What do we think? I guess we don't have to decide now, do we?
No, I don't think we should.
Okay. But
I
it's
thought the
fresh in
board
our
packet
minds.
said we were to give direction to staff. Is that,
Consideration of accepting the district defined pension plan and OPEB and discussion and direction. Yeah. On investment strategies. Yeah. So, yeah, I think we could decide today, but I don't think we need to. We have budgets coming up. Do you want to make a decision tonight, Mary?
no, I was following Tom's lead of what decisions we might make or what we could talk about. And, and I'm inclined to, we know we're in good shape. I'm inclined to stretch out the timeline to 2027. Because we know that we've negotiated the employees' contribution to that part. That was what came out of the represented employees contract negotiation, right? Is this
That's
still,
correct.
that was Patrick's novel idea,
That's right.
which is also why we have that weird number that maybe we don't know where it came from because it was, created in a labor contract negotiation. Anyway, but as always, I defer to Tom on these things because he understands it all so much better and I trust him.
Well, No, anyway, but I think we ought to vote on the investment strategy or vote not to change, if nothing else, that's a direction to staff.
Do you want to leave more, or you want to put more in strategy one and take it out of strategy two?
Well, Ira, help us on this.
I support that.
Yeah, I'm kind of okay with 2/3, 1/3.
Yeah, again, I think this is a very tough market over the next few months and probably the next year or so. So this may not be the ideal time to get more aggressive. So, sort of thinking about it and bringing it back next year when hopefully there's a little more optimism. The only investment optimism I have right now comes from the fact that every single investment advisor that is talking about how terrible things are. And usually when that happens, the markets take off because they're all wrong.
I've
But-
heard that before, and it's true.
Good to know.
Yeah, but everyone across the board, across the country, is pretty much saying the next few months, the next couple of years are going to be really tough. So it may not be the right time to get aggressive.
Okay.
So, when we make a policy, like we're going to do this by 2025, we use all of the data available to us at that time. But, policy, things change and policies can change over time. And so, it seems to me like we can say, well, we want to maintain 2025. So we got to kick in some more money now, or policies change. We can change a policy to 2027. And so I would like to look for information from staff at the board meeting where we're going to have to figure this out, is the upsides and downsides to both. What is the downside to changing it to 2027 and not kicking in an extra 100,000 a year into the fund? So anyway, I don't think we have to make that decision tonight, but I look forward to seeing that at a future board meeting. And I
So
like
we
the
do-
idea that we have the flexibility to change a policy if we need to or want.
And Michael and Ira as well, I point out, if the board is keeping our eyes open and we see the economy really crash and burn, well, we can put a call into Ira and say, hi, we don't want to meet you next year. We want to meet you next month, or, next week or something like that, and address it. We don't have to do these things once a year.
Absolutely. Yeah. When the world's a little more crazy is a better time to be taking a little more frequent look at it. And yeah. And again, if you're still doing meetings by Zoom, frequently available.
Well, Ira, I think we decided as a board that we would always have the Zoom option moving forward, even when we go back to live meetings. Isn't that right, Tom? Steve, didn't we do that?
No, there hasn't been a decision about that yet.
Yeah.
Maybe we did that at CMSA.
Yeah,
Did we do that at CMSA, Michael? I think we did.
Anyway, but I do live in the Bay Area, so it's not that hard to get over across the Richmond San Rafael Bridge and get to a meeting if I need to.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any more comments from the board? Are there any public comments? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
I move that we consider adopting the district's defined benefit pension plan and OPEB evaluation reports as a measurement date of June 30th, 2020, and give direction on the CEPPT and CERBT investment strategies.
That direction being that on those two investment strategies, that we're not going to change anything.
Very good.
That's correct.
And I'll second that.
Okay, Julia, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, thank you. Borstein,
Yes.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Meggs,
Yes.
Scylla,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
unanimous vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving
Ira.
on.
All right.
Thank you, Ira.
Thank you. So great to see
Thank you, Ira.
Bye.
Good work.
Let me go back to number 4, committee report out, and can I have a meeting report from the Ad Hoc Human Resource Committee? Who's going to give that?
Mary, I don't see Mary here.
No,
So-
Mary's here.
Oh, Mary's there. All right, Mary.
Uh,
You want to go ahead?
Mary from a hotel room in Atlanta. Yes, the ad hoc HR committee met on Monday to review agenda item number 10, replacing an existing budgeted position of compliance officer with a new classification. So it's an interesting budget item, agenda item we'll get to later, but it all seemed in good order. So it was nice to get the HR committee together. I don't think there's anything that needs to be discussed further than that. Michael, did you want to add anything?
No, it's the next item on the agenda after committee meetings. So,
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Finance Committee, Tom, do you want to do that? We really did.
Yeah, real quick, the
The
finance
the
committee.
consent
looked
items, which we
over
didn't really talk
3 or
about.
4 of the consent calendar items. We thought they were all in order. And, and then we had a long discussion of this pension. And, when we talk about good financial condition of the district, our pension plans, I think the board can reflect, they're in pretty good shape too, compared to the rest, with our funding plan. And then we reviewed other agenda items that the board will talk about. It was lucky we got to review the pension plan twice, because I think it really helped us understand,
Yeah.
at least the finance committee, better. And that's it.
Yeah, we talked about the press release, but that's coming up later. The pitch document. Okay. Central and San, Michael, do you want to do that, or do you want me to?
oh, I'll start. And
Okay.
yeah. Oh, we spent quite a bit of time at the beginning on one of my most favorite topics, which is information technology vulnerability management presentation. And in this day and age, although it's important for our VSD, I think because of the systems at CMSA, they have a little bit more of a liability than we do. Tuamas, who is our IT person there, spent a great deal of time talking about the precautions and procedures that he's put in place to hopefully prevent something bad from happening, including, it's interesting, they send out intentional phishing scams to the employees at CMSA to see if by accident they buy in. And then if they make a mistake and answer something that they shouldn't have answered, then they have to take a little training class. And then each time they do it, perhaps it becomes more and more of an issue. But he seems to have that really under control, and I was very impressed by that.
I agree, and I'm also in the business, and I think he's doing a good job. We did make some suggestions moving forward, and he's going to keep doing what he's doing. He does a fine job. I say that until we get hacked, and then I'm going to say it was terrible.
General capital improvements, secondary clarifier, number 1s and number 4. We went ahead and we put out a contract to prepare anyway, to get those 2 things done. There were some issues. As you may remember, the first membrane cover of digester number 1 ripped last summer. And then there was a problem because they replaced it. Evoco was the company, and they sent out the wrong size. There were some things that happened way back in the day that was an honest mistake, but it was a mistake on their part. Anyway, as part of the getting them to pay for some of that, we're going to have to replace the digester 2 number 2 cover shortly, and we are going to move that slightly ahead because as part of the settlement of damages from the mistake, they gave us a good price. And even though it's more than we had thought, given an 8.5% inflation rate right now, if we lock it in now, we know what it is, and so we're going to go ahead and do that. And one of the things was mentioned a few minutes ago was there was a number of people on the board who thought maybe it would be a nice idea to transition back to in-person meetings, but there was a little bit of pushback from a couple of the people on the board, and they said, right now, let's just keep it the way it is. So that's what we're doing for now.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find it because I left my printed copy in the car. I'd also want to point out that CMSA won a lot of state awards, and
I've got them here if you want.
thank you. Yeah, would you? Because they did really well.
Number 9. The Safety Program of the Year from CWEA, first place. First place. Pre-treatment and pollution prevention person of the year is one of our guys there, first place. Engineering and research award, which was from our digester volatile loading study that we did, second place. Mechanical technician of the year, third place. And treatment plant of the year, third place. So
That's good. So that's what we did.
we're all doing good.
Yep. Thank you. North Bay Watershed, Pam?
Yes, they had their conference, which is every 2 years on the 8th. The title was Climate Change / the Weathering Extremes Together. So I'm just going to read a brief caption on sort of the gist of it. The changing climate has already had profound impacts on our region's water and watersheds. Our challenge is to adapt and build resiliency for future generations in the North Bay. The North Bay watershed engaged with industry experts on the direct and indirect relationships our varied North Bay communities have with weather extremes and ways in which our water suppliers and watershed managers are adapting and planning for a wildly collaborative future. I attended it. It was 9 to 3. It was amazing. Andy had some of the most interesting speakers at various different avenues of research and just local research people mostly. But anyway, I sent you what they put out with a lot of the videos of the conference. And Jared Huffman was our guest speaker. So if you want to look at some of the videos or one of them, I don't know who else went, if anybody else went, but it was a lot of hard work put into it, and it was a fabulous conference.
Okay.
I'd like to comment because I went and I attended all 4 sessions, including Jared, who is such a good speaker and completely germane. But some of the interesting things when this professor from UC Merced talked about thinning forests and how it allows more water to stay in the forest and makes the trees healthier, as you'd expect. And it also produces more runoff if you thin the forest. So he had a lot of reasons for that. And then there was a real interesting lady from Fiber Shed, and she had some things that I found kind of startling. 60% of our wardrobes are made out of plastic now, like rayon or what all that other stuff, as opposed to natural fibers like carbon, like cotton and wool. And she said most of the needed carbon absorption can be obtained by effective agricultural practices, which we always think of internal combustion engines being the problem. But I agree with Pam, it was extremely well done conference.
Okay. Verbal report. Anything else on report committees? Any public comment on report committees? Okay.
Can I just make a brief announcement? I believe Take Back Day I want to say April 30th, but I know it's coming up really soon. And that's
What
when you
is that day?
take back day, where you can drop off your pharmaceuticals,
Oh,
is April 30th. Not 100% sure, but I think that's what I saw.
okay. Thank you. Steve, General Manager report, please.
Yes, President Kelly, just a couple of items tonight. First, and foremost, we're pleased to welcome our new operation and maintenance manager to the management team of the district, who's joined us for the meeting today.
Hello,
Paul Brummer.
everybody. Good
Hey,
evening.
Paul, welcome aboard.
Thank you. Thank you.
He's doing a fabulous job. He's been here about 3 weeks or 4, I forget. Yeah, 3 weeks. Something like that, 3.5 weeks. And much accomplished. We can even point to some things in today's packet that he's helped out with, and we really appreciate and the leadership he's already showing. And he comes to us from CMSA, where he worked 7 or 8 years, I forget. And then before that, worked at City of Daly City, doing similar collection system management issues that we do here now. Also worked in water district side of the house over there. So, and a great deal of knowledge in the wastewater industry, including he was really responsible for managing Sanitary District number 2's pump stations just over the creek from us. So very, very familiar with pump station operations, and it's going to contribute a lot to the district in that area. Paul, I welcome you to say hello to the board members. And
Yeah, good evening, everybody. I appreciate the warm welcome, and Steve, all the positive thoughts and comments there. Like Steve says, I've been in the industry a while, and it's been a good welcoming over here to Ross Valley. Everybody's been fabulous, and really excited to be part of the team and experience some new stations and events and learn some new people, get to work with some new people and a little new environment. It's always good for me. I enjoy the challenge. So, learning the new pump stations and the new systems and CMMS, and it's really exciting. I'm getting a lot out of it. And yeah, I'm just looking forward to adding as much input as I can and ensuring we're all successful as an agency or a district.
Great. And of course, we'll have you in a nice new building by the end of the year.
Yes,
so
sir.
that should be good. And now I've got
What Paul didn't know was we have a game show that we play at the RVSD called General Manager for a Day, which you have to play right away. So he arrived here, and Steve was out on an emergency, and Felicia was out of town also, and Paul became acting general manager for the day. And you may have noticed in the IJ, there was a big article about a sinkhole that appeared at the north end of San Anselmo Avenue. And it was San Anselmo's issue and problem because it was not a sewer, it was
Storm drain.
Creek.
Our people went out and assisted in a big way by CCTVing the storm drain and helping them out. So Paul was right there for that on like day one here at the agency. So
I'm glad to hear that, Michael. And I have to tell you that unrelated, because I knew Sean Condry, the Public Works director. First off, I coached his kid in Little League, but obviously when I served on town council. So when that bridge was fixed, I was stunned. It was so fast. And so I actually texted him. I was like, this is really an extraordinary job. Congratulations. And he admitted to, or he said, everybody, all hands on deck. Of course, my next text is, now that it's fixed, aren't we ripping that bridge down? But apparently that's been postponed sometime. But I'm glad for your help on that, Paul.
No problem. Thank you for trusting me with the authority to handle some district stuff there.
Yeah, and so now in the small group we have with this small board, we now have 2 faces that used to work for CMSA that joined RVSD. They've got great employees over there. Let's just keep going, Steve. Okay, thank you very much. And so was that it for you, Steve?
No, that was just the first of a couple of things. But don't worry, it's not very much. The second thing I should think you should be aware of is, as I reported last month, we had provided input into the proposed statewide order for collection systems that the State Water Board is considering. And we, along with many Bay Area collection systems, provided written comments that we worked together on in the BACWA Collection Systems Committee, and provided those comments to the State Water Board. And really, they focus on cost of compliance. You know, there's no question that we support the order creating standards that make a even playing field for things like the CMMS. You know, what are the expectations for condition assessment, and, you know, just a properly running program. We support that. But we pointed out some unintended consequences of potential changes. One example I'll give you that I pointed out was they had a new requirement for monitoring creeks or the bay if there's a spill. And it involved these devices that really require special calibration, training, and they're expensive to use. And they don't really tell you much about water quality of a sewage spill. So, I mean, that was an example that, you know, let's not add those monitoring requirements. They're really not going to help with the management of spills, you know. And so that's one example of, you know, and to deal with the cost of compliance. For us, sure, we could do something like that. We're a medium-sized collection system, but 3/4 of the collection systems under this order would really struggle to keep that kind of expertise in-house, because they're, you know, 1 million gallon a day or less, and there's hundreds of them, right, that would really struggle to maintain that type of infrastructure. So, you know, we're working through the details of such as those, and they really revolve around cost of compliance. And that's it for that. And then I would just say, I'm sure you're all very interested in, because we're moving ahead with the 1111 Anderson construction. We held a pre-construction meeting on March 30th, well attended by all the different subcontractors that do everything under this, you know, under the building, from electrical to data wire to flooring to, you know, all of the subs that were there. And that was nice to see. And so construction is scheduled to begin this Monday, April 25th. And so we're going to get underway, and we'll keep you updated.
Thank you very much. Anything else? That's it. Okay. Thank you very much, Steve. I'd like to move on to agenda item number 10. Consideration of replacing the existing budgeted position of compliance officer with the new classification of management analysis 1/2, and adopting a new job description and salary range. Is that Felicia, or is that you, Steve?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and let Felicia introduce it, but this is in leading up to, you know, this year's budget and the org chart and the different job positions that we'll have. And I'll just note, as Felicia is getting ready to introduce the item, that we had a temporary hire this past year that's where we experimented with this position as a little bit more of a, you know, a management analyst, which can serve the engineering department, but also cross division work as it comes up. And it's been working out very well. And so as a result of this experience, we're recommending this change in our organizational chart. Felicia?
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, so the board might remember a few years back, we had several vacancies in the engineering division, and we reshuffled around some positions, creating, I think, eliminating the technical services manager position, creating a senior engineer position. We also created some classification series. So we had, you know, job descriptions that had series 1, series 2, and then senior level series for individual classifications. So around that same time, there was a placeholder put in the engineering department for a compliance officer. And the number of employees for the district hadn't increased or decreased. It was just a matter of, like I said, shifting some of those original positions around to where we thought we might better allocate needed roles and responsibilities. So the compliance officer position was budgeted but never filled. We had other priority recruitments to make, namely the O&M manager. Welcome again, Paul. O&M superintendent also, if you remember, was created, and we've just recently made a job offer to fill that position. So you'll be introduced to a new face here soon. So looking at the entire organization, the compliance officer position, where we recognized a need, didn't seem to be one that we needed to allocate for that narrow of a role and responsibility. And rather, it occurred to us that a job classification such as management analyst, which is somewhat unusual, we've discussed this in the HR committee, unique to governmental agencies, specifically municipalities use this type of position quite frequently for up-and-coming managers, people who have good research, good analysis skills, good writing skills, not necessarily specialists, but generalists that can float between departments and provide necessary support in a variety of different areas, anywhere from applying from grant applications to actually performing compliance duties and following up on rules and regulations of the district. So this particular position, as we were thinking about it, as Steve mentioned, we actually hired a temporary employee to test the waters, if you will, and it's turned out very well. The person who we've hired temporarily, her name is Courtney. I think the board's met her on an occasion or two. She's written a couple of staff reports for us. She wrote the staff report that's included in the packet tonight. She's also, I want to mention, provided a lot of support in the area of public outreach, where the district had been relying very heavily on NV5 to provide its public outreach and communications efforts. Courtney has taken over some of those duties in-house, providing back-end support for our website, for example, working with the engineering department and the permitting department admin staff to make sure that our web pages are kept fresh and up to date. So again, this position has shown itself to be very valuable to us in a variety of different ways across all of our departments. So with that, we talked to our class and comp consultant, Price Consulting. They performed our classification and compensation study several years ago. We asked Shelley, who worked with us at that point, to see if she could help us with a salary range and a job description. So she put this together for us, and we made some fine-tuning edits to it for presentation to the board this evening. And with that, I guess I would just say, if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them. It's not something that we anticipate going out for recruitment immediately, but when we do, we will invite Courtney to apply. It will be an open recruitment. So with that, Christina also helped me with this particular staff report, so I want to give her credit where credit is due. Thank you, Christina. Did I forget to mention anything, Christina, in the whirlwind of the report that I just gave?
I would say that the change results in a
smaller
savings, although with the step increases that we build in. Yes, I don't know. I'll let Christina finish my thought.
The compliance officer was budgeted at a higher budget, so this will save money in the short term. If we do create a senior position in the future, that position might bump it up a little bit above the compliance officer, but right now we don't have a need for that.
Perfect. Thank you, Christina.
Paul, Michael? You're off, you're muted. You were on the,
No, we
Yours?
went over this in the HR committee and, like Mary said, I think it's a lovely idea. And our staff, who I trust implicitly, seems to like it and recommend it. So let's go for it, in my opinion.
Okay. Pam, do you have any questions?
No, I think it's fabulous. Keeps things in order, and anyway, I think it's a great idea.
Thank you, Tom.
No, I'm glad we've got an HR committee to review these types of things, because it's not my area of expertise. And so it's good that we've got people that look over this. And yeah, I think the district management knows best on things like this. And so let's trust them.
Okay. With that, Mary, do we have a motion?
Sure. I move that we replace the budgeted unrepresented position of compliance officer and adopt a new classification and salary range for the position of management analyst 1-2.
Second.
All right. Can I have a roll call, please, Julia?
Yes, thank you. Borstein,
Yes.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Meggs,
Yes,
Scylla,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to item number 11, consideration of
Uh,
authorized.
President Kelly, may I make a quick question, please?
Of course.
Earlier in the meeting, the board agreed to review items 4, 5, and 6. And I believe we currently have only reviewed items 4 and 5. Were there no requests
Six was the
for
verbal
future
report by the
items?
general manager.
Sorry?
6 was the verbal report by the general manager. Oh, board members, requests for future agenda items. You're saying I missed that?
Not necessarily.
Let's
say you
move
missed
on
it.
to number 6. Thank you, Julia.
You're welcome.
That's great. I appreciate that very much. Verbal reports by board members, and it's on the top of the page. I flipped the page and, was done with the first page. Although I had noted, go back to this. So do we have any board member requests for future agenda items or any verbal reports? Tom? Tom has none. Pam?
it is April 30th for Take Back Day.
Okay. Michael? Mary? And I have none, but thank you for that. And I appreciate you catching that, Julia. Now let's move on to number 11, consideration of authorizing the general manager to grant a temporary construction easement on the 2000 Larkspur Landing Circle property to Pacific Gas and Electric for its electrical transmission tower relocation and replacement project. Steve.
Yes, thank you, President Kelly. This item is a unique item, but staff wanted to bring it to the board's attention that PG&E, another utility, but privately owned, not public, has a pressing construction need, and our vacant, cleaned up property happens to be located in just an ideal position for them to build a crane and perform a replacement of an old transmission tower for their transmission lines that serve electricity to southern Marin County, all the communities south of our district. So a very important transmission line system. And when they do this type of work with public agencies, they have a template for a temporary construction easement that I was working with their contractor that arranges these agreements. And so they drafted the easement. I had our district council review it, make some good changes. I looked at it, I was looking at it from a perspective of making sure they did a reasonable job of restoration, because that type of heavy activity could leave a scar. And we have a nice clean site right now after doing the cleanup project. So I think we have some language in there that protects the district's interests generally. And they did ask me if we would be interested in receiving compensation. It was a volunteer, and I volunteered us to receive compensation They have their algorithm, and they calculated based on the square footage. And I'll just point to board packet page 298 has a map, which is fairly illustrative. I could put it on the screen, but if you have that in front of you, you can refer to that. Where the staging area would cover quite an area below the retaining walls on that flat area of site. And then the crane area would be in the southeast corner near where the Drake's Cove Way dead end comes in. And then that's near the little hillside there where the tower is located, adjacent to East Sir Francis Drake. So the area of compensation, is 165,000 square feet, and they came up with $2,000 a month for that vast area. We get about that much for about a fifth the size of that area from a contractor. So I communicated that to them, and they agreed to double their proposed compensation. So what's before us is an agreement to pay us the district $4,000 a month. And the duration of the project is estimated to be 2.5 months. So that would be a total of $10,000. But if it goes on, the rent would just be prorated. And that provides, that there's skin in the game, if you will, with PG&E, recognizing we're taking on an incremental risk. And we did make sure there was language in there that indemnifies the district from third-party claims for a period of time after the work is done, just in case. So we recommend that the board assign staff the authority to grant this easement and temporarily on the property. It should be done long before any other use is anticipated in that portion of the property.
Didn't you tell me something interesting about those electrical power lines at our finance meeting?
Oh, well, Tom had some interesting historic.
All right, Tom.
Well, I believe that these electrical power lines were put in to power the electric train that ran, through Marin County. And at the time, they were the largest electric power lines in the world. I think these are the ones, not positive.
Okay. All right. Do we have any questions from board members on this item? Tom?
No questions, no.
Pam? Mary?
No, I wanted to point out the press, rather the staff report says requested compensation of $2,000 per month. So I got confused for a second. I thought they were requesting we compensate them. And then I went to the ordinance or the easement.
Oh.
No. They requested that we get compensated.
Yeah, good. Yeah, that could have been written more clearly. Thank you.
That's okay. The easement made it very clear. But, we like when money comes in.
Then they agreed to an increase in 4,000.
I know. We drive a hard bargain. And it's nice to play well with others, including privately owned public utilities, privately owned utilities that aren't. No questions.
Okay, thank you. Michael.
Well, maybe I'll just make a motion then.
Okay.
Approve the general manager to sign and grant the proposed temporary construction easement on the 2000 Larkspur Landing Circle property to PG&E for its electric transmission tower relocation / replacement project.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mary. Julia, can you please do a roll call?
Yes, thank you. Borstein,
Yes.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Meggs,
Yes.
Scylla,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we want to move on to number 12, informational items, monthly operations and metrics report. Any staff report or comments on that?
Oh, yeah, we have our operation and maintenance manager here. I want to just acknowledge Paul responded to some ideas I had to enhance this monthly metrics report. So this month has more detail about crew activities for your reading pleasure. to get a little more insight into how busy and productive our crews are. And I want to thank Paul for pulling that information together. We also enhanced some of the metrics, the work order numbers in the pump station crew for the monthly report. We summarize these things in the annual, but we reviewed the content of the metrics report. And we want this to really be a running journal of the great deal of work that our crews accomplish every day, day in and day out. But anyway, Paul, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if there's anything in the metrics report, whether in the graphics or in the narrative that you helped put together that you think is worth pointing out to the board for this month.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at we're starting to track a little harder, and there's some detailed graphs on some of the pump station corrective and preventative maintenance work graphs there, just to show some of the corrective action that we've taken after performing some preventative maintenance, following up on corrections. I think in the future, we're going to be adapting that a little bit more to do some corrective unplanned and a couple other little things to detail out some more of the detailed work orders that we're doing, as well as some of the verbiage there. I worked a little to detail out some more of the tasks, so a little better described, and ensure that everybody understands really what we are doing out in the pump station to really capture that work. And I look forward to enhancing it in the future.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think another thing Paul will work on is now that the SCADA is really getting put into all the stations, is one of the uncontested item, or I'm sorry, the consent calendar item for the level controllers.
Yes.
That brings us to a point where we could, in this report, have more of the pump station flow data.
Yes,
shown.
definitely.
Just for interest, so the board members and the public, you can see the flows that are coming from the different parts of the district. Yes, board member Meggs.
I really like what you did on the items of note in current reporting period. Is that part of this?
That's right. This is an enhanced narrative, we call it. Yeah.
As a nurse, I like these kind of specifics because I don't know a lot of these things, but I really like the one about the carbon sample, that you're able to do a lab test on it that tells you the expectancy of the carbon, which assists in the migration of future odor complaints. Now that is something to talk about. No, it's amazing. I mean, anyway, I learned something. So thank you, Paul, for that.
Of course.
Yeah, thank you, board member Meggs. And then, there's a big bullet in the pump crew. This was the culmination of this larger paragraph was a culmination of work, lessons learned from the October 24th storm, and how we reprogrammed the logic for when we get the really big flows, not to have everything just go from a start stop, which broke the circuit, but have it do more of a smooth start, a ramp up that the VFDs give us. And so it won't just shut down our station when we need it the most. So the logic that had been programmed that we all inherited here kind of let us down on October 24th. And so pump crew was key in getting, working with Todd Beecher and reprogramming the logic so that we won't have these hard stops that break the circuit, both for power from PG&E, but also for starting up the generator. We needed to change that. And so this was an important milestone that was worth documenting.
Steve, I also want to point out that I appreciate the verbiage on the SSOs. So, it helps me understand what's going on. So yeah, a tree got knocked over and it dislodged a pipe. Got it. It's, that's helpful because that, why are we having spills? Well, you're always going to have spills. It doesn't seem like it was a particularly bad month, but I like the verbiage. So that's good.
Yeah, I think it's important. I appreciate it. You know, that it seemed like it took me a while to, many months of getting excellent questions from board members, like, why do we have 3 spills? And then I would tell the story. And a few months ago, I got in the habit of giving you at least a sentence about each SSO so that you had at least something to start with.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
Do we
you.
have any other questions on the metrics from board members? Michael? Michael has not. Mary?
No.
Mary has not. Tom said no. Pam asked her a question. Thank you very much. Would you want to talk really briefly about the press release?
Can I hand that one to you, Felicia?
Sure. Yeah, we presented this at the Finance Committee meeting yesterday. As the board's aware, we have a credit rating as an organization, and each of the different credit agencies, S&P being the most well-known, Fitch being a second, and what's the other one, Corey? The third one escaping my, for Tom can chime in here too. You go.
Moody's.
Moody's, right, Moody's. And so each of these rating agencies keeps track of us, much like our personal credit ratings that we have. And you can check on each of the individual credit rating agencies for your individual credit, right? And they all maybe have a little bit of a different rating, even though you're the same person. So as the district is the same organization, each of the rating agencies has a little bit of a different way of rating us. Fitch actually contacts us every year since I've been here with a questionnaire and asks us to give an update on different aspects of our financial positions. And each year they, after receiving the answers to these questions, they publish a press release with either a change in the our rating or a stable rating. And this year we received no change in our rating, but a change in our outlook from stable to positive. And so we thought we would share this with the board of directors. It's good. It's a good reflection of the district's financial positions. And although the AA- isn't as high as we would like it, I know Director Gaffney would like to see us. And in fact, Director Kelly also mentioned maybe next year we could try upselling Fitch a little bit better and see if we can get a higher rating. Happy to do that, and of course answer any questions that the board might have.
And I think, if those indications from the regional water board, if they follow through on rescinding the cease and desist order, that I get the sense that the financial rating agencies would view that favorably.
Yeah.
As a big milestone step.
We might contact them. And is it one of the reportable? It might be one of the reportable issues. The annual reportable factors.
Yes, it may be something that they ask about, and even if it's not, we can certainly volunteer that information. So
right.
It'd be a good thing to do.
Yeah. And Tom mentioned that maybe you should tell Fitch that Moody's is rating is higher. What's your problem?
Yeah, S&P rates us AA. What's wrong with you guys?
Right.
But we do appreciate, maybe they're going to do it in a step and give us the positive outlook. They don't want to admit, okay, we're a little bit late, but okay, positive, and then maybe AA.
Yeah.
I think you might be right, Tom.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like to me too. Okay, any other comments on that? All right, thank you very much. With that, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. The next regular meeting is on May 18th, 2022 at 5 p.m. via Zoom. Thank you all very much.